Thank you for joining us, Nick and Sara. It's great, and thank you for coming along to the Green PB Organisers to this first webinar of our new network. And I'm going to kick off by asking Nick to just introduce yourself and say a little bit about what your role in the Your Pots programme has been.
Yeah, hi everybody. My name's Nick Smith. I'm the operations manager at Lancaster District CVS. We're the infrastructure organisation that supports community groups all around the local government area of the Lancaster District. We've been involved in the Closing Loops project and Your Pots for the last few years, acting as the organisation which holds the funding, ultimately makes the grants to organisations that win their bids, and organise all of the application and verification processes.
Great. And Sara, tell us a little bit about yourself and your role in Your Pots.
Yes, so I'm Sara. I'm the founder of Lancaster and Morecambe Repair Cafe. We've just celebrated our first year anniversary, and last year we were successful in securing funding with Your Pots. And yeah, I'm hoping that we can discuss it further today during this session, and you'll learn a bit more about me and the Repair Cafe and what we do.
I've been part of the Closing Loops partnership that has helped design and put together the Your Pots programme. And just to explain, and I think I've mentioned this before to some of you, there's also a smaller community pots programme which is decided in an ordinary grant panel manner. So there's smaller grants that are available once a year through community pots, and then once a year, and we're just starting year 3 of this process with some exciting innovations, which will probably cause us a few headaches. We're about to, as I say, run the 3rd year. So I'm just going to start asking some questions to Nick first. And I know that the LDCVS is the accountable body, you said that earlier, for Your Pot, the Your Pot Fund. Could you tell us a little bit about the background to the Closing Loops programme and how funding for Your Pots came about?
Yeah, absolutely. So Closing Loops is a National Lottery Community Fund funded project, which is investing £1.5 million in North Lancashire, the Lancaster District, over a 5-year period. So we're in the 3rd or 4th year of that now. It's led by Food Futures, which is a sustainable food partnership involving a large number of stakeholders interested specifically in sustainable food and food justice in North Lancashire. Closing Loops itself has delivered a huge number of different strands over the last few years, and will continue in the next couple of years, around activities that create positive outcomes for people and for the environment by reducing waste and building community resilience, particularly around food, but in lots of other areas of our economy and in lots of other areas of waste as well. So we work on Closing Loops alongside Less North Lancashire, Egg Cup, Global Link, Scientists for Global Responsibility, and Shared Future CIC as well. As part of all of this, I think during the design of the Closing Loops project, everybody was aware that there would be lots and lots of ideas out there in the community, particularly ideas that could develop over that 5-year period, that could expand or extend or innovate on the overall idea of the Closing Loops project. And so as part of our negotiations with the National Lottery Community Fund to receive the funding, we also requested £300,000 in small grants to be made available for distribution locally, to enable organisations like community groups, charities and social enterprises to develop creative ideas that help communities and the environment to flourish. And those could be ideas around things like reusing, repurposing and repairing materials, around sharing resources like tools, materials or skills, repurposing unused spaces so that they can benefit the community, inspiring people to use and buy things more sustainably or to produce less waste. And by cooking and growing and eating food that could be local, seasonal and sustainably produced. And all of the projects that come up through Pots of Possibility and all of the other activity that's delivered through Closing Loops really goes towards trying to create a regenerative economy for North Lancashire. And that's one that goes beyond being sustainable, a word that often gets used, where really that's implying activity that keeps things the same, whereas a regenerative economy is hopefully one that actually improves things for individuals, for communities, and for the environment in all sorts of different ways.
Oh, that's great. And Sara, how did you tell us about how the Repair Cafe project came about and your role within it, and what was the inspiration for all of that?
Well, I think it goes back a number of years actually. I've always been one for repairing as opposed to repurchasing. I've always been a bit of a tinkerer since I was a kid, really. And I know there was a big community of people out there that were trying to put the emphasis on the environment, or the environmental impact of a lot of the fast fashion, for example, and the lower quality of items that are produced. Then you've got that it extends to, like, shopping on Amazon and things like that. The impact on our high streets. There's so many variables. And a few years ago, I came across a similar kind of project. I think it was in Grange over Sands, that was a kind of monthly get together of people sharing skills and tools in order to repair and essentially try and eliminate things going to landfill.
Right.
We have a small but very mighty team of people. And it was, I think we'd been running less than a month when it came to our attention that Pots of Possibility was something that we could perhaps, apply to. We were worried that not having charitable status and things like that might prevent us from securing the funding that we needed. But this was open to us as a social enterprise, as a community enterprise. And we did tick the boxes of everything that was required in terms of reuse, repair, recycle. And because of lots of ideas that have been my own initially, but then lots of ideas that have been generated by local community members, there were so many things, there was scope for so much to help, not just with avoiding things going to landfill, but of course, sharing skills and bringing the community together, which I think a lot of people, forget that those are important aspects of this enterprise and many others like ours. And like I said earlier, we've been running, we've just had our first anniversary. We have been on Jeremy Vine's Radio 2 show talking about the whole concept of repair cafes, and a similar discussion to what we're having now, actually. And there's been a lot of media attention in that sense. I think we're just over 800 members now. And like I say, we have pretty much the same team we had in the beginning, plus a couple of extra members. We did start off with more venues, but then we decided to do a sort of reevaluation every 3 months or so. And during that time, it became apparent that some of the venues weren't getting the same traction. And because we all have day jobs, we just do this on the side. We needed to focus our attention into the stronger venues where we were most needed. And as of today, we are at Halton Mill and the Gregson Community Arts Centre, which is really good as well because I've been working alongside Charles there for a number of years doing different things, and I still do all those things with that as well. So that's where we're
And
at.
and I think the Gregson Centre was another of the applicants as well. So
Yes, that's right. That's
that
right.
joining up and
Yeah,
the closing of the loops is all part of that.
yeah, absolutely.
But Nick, so it's quite a different way to how grants are normally decided. Could you tell us a bit about what extra work was involved and was it worth it in your view?
I mean, there certainly is a lot of extra work involved, but it definitely is worth it as well. So we do a lot of grant making into the Lancaster district as a CVS. We work with a variety of different organisations and fundraise in various ways in order to bring investment into community organisations across the district. Certainly two of the things that have been very different about Pots of Possibility and Your Pots in particular is that, first of all, we were negotiating with the National Lottery Community Fund in order to receive permission to distribute lottery players' money locally. And that was certainly a long and very thorough process in relation to ensuring that they were satisfied that we could deliver the same level of due diligence and responsibility with the public's money as they felt that they were able to do and obviously have done for many years. Secondly, Your Pots involving the participative budgeting, participative grant making process was not something that we'd been involved in before. So it was fantastic to work with Jez and his colleagues from Shared Future CIC, not only in developing the concept for the community fund, but also in delivering it over the last few years as well. I've been quite used to a process where we would receive applications, set criteria, bring a grant panel together, examine and discuss proposals, and then make decisions behind closed doors about how much money projects could have and what kind of conditions they might need to fulfill along the way. Your Pots is obviously very different, very open to the public. It involves publishing plenty of information, organising an event that people can come along to, developing and implementing a voting system which is fair and gives everybody an opportunity. And I guess that means potentially more work for the organisations that are applying as well. It's not a one and done in terms of the form. There's more to do in terms of turning up, performing, persuading people, and I guess looking your fellow applicants in the eye across the room as well, which is not something that would usually happen. But as I say, it's a hugely positive experience. It's absolutely worth the additional work because I think so much more comes out of it for the Closing Loops project, for community organisations, for the people that they help, for our environment and our economy in North Lancashire, and for our own experience as a CVS in the way that we work with our members and the way that we think about how we can change the way that we grant funding in the future as well.
Great. And Sarah, you've obviously gone on in the Repair Cafe to do loads of things after the last year. And I suppose hopefully some of that was down to the funding that you were able to get through your pots. Basically, did it meet your expectations when you joined the Your Pots process? Was it what you expected? And and what do you think surprised you most about being part of Your Pots?
I think having not done anything like this before, I didn't know what to expect. It was all very open and transparent, and I was fortunate enough to go to a meeting prior to the actual event, prior to the application process, which allowed us to ask questions and get information that we wouldn't ordinarily have through just the website and things like that, which was really good. I think it was definitely beneficial for everybody involved. Um, I think I didn't realize how much of a community aspect to it would be. And that's the thing that really surprised me most and was the most enjoyable thing. We got so much more out of it. And regardless of whether we were successful with securing funding or not, there were so many relationships established through the process from start to finish and have continued to. Um, that's the one thing that really surprised me. Yeah.
Great. And for Nick, what was your standout moments as part of, say, let's look back at 2024. You've been involved in 2023 as well, but just in the last year, what's been the standout moment? And also, where is your heart gone? Oh no, this could go horribly wrong.
Um, I think the standout moment for me, particularly of last year, was making use of kind of increased space that we decided to use in the story. We could bring more people together. We could have a proper marketplace environment, um, and really seeing people turning up to that event, possibly knowing some of the projects, likely not knowing about all of them, and some, I guess, maybe not knowing very much about any of them at all, but genuinely wanting to find out about all of the different things that were being proposed, thinking about who it is that they really wanted to support, and maybe challenging some of the preconceptions that they might have had about different projects, different organizations, or the process, that they might have had as they were walking in the door. I guess the heart in the mouth moment for me is always when it comes to opening the fund back up for applications again, because it's like telling people that you're going to have a party and you wonder whether or not they're going to turn up or not. We always put a lot of work into talking to people about the funding, giving them the opportunity to come and ask us questions in various different formats. But at the end of the day, you kind of don't know almost until the last moment whether or not people are really going to apply. So not just from last year, but always, that's something that I always worry about slightly, but it always comes good in the end.
Great. And so, Sarah, I mean, obviously, you heard in a room that there was going to be a vote and then there was going to be an announcement. So that must have created some emotion in yourself, but also
Oh,
knowing that
yes.
other people weren't going to get funded. How did that feel? What was it like to be part of a group of people all going for a limited pot of funding?
Aside from the community aspect of it, and like Nick says, to reiterate, this sort of marketplace, sort of the way that it was set out was brilliant and a great way to get involved and meet other people and share ideas and projects. There's that element of competition. You're going against, I think there were 10 of us, 10 groups, six that could get funding. So there was always going to be the possibility that we might not be one of them. We were very, very new to the district compared to some of the others who were much more established. I was very worried. I think we were all a bit worried that we weren't going to succeed. But we were anticipating that because we were very young as a organisation. When it was announced, there's always that feeling of excitement and accomplishment that and the fact that so many people have believed in us. But you feel like you wish you could help everybody. You really do wish that everybody could benefit from the funding pot. But you know that that's not possible, you know?
Great. We're going to wrap up in a
Can I ask
minute and
Sara?
open up, well, wrap up this segment and open up to the rest of the people. So I've just got one more question for each of you. And just for Nick, what's what's going to be different this year in your pots?
So after we wrap up every year of Your Pots, we take a lot of feedback in various ways, feedback forms from people on the day, more detailed requests for information that go out afterwards. We consider that carefully and we bring it to a design day that we tend to hold each year in the late spring, where people who are interested, who've taken part in the past or might be interested in taking part in the future, can get together and review what we've learned and make some suggestions about how we might like to adjust the process in the future. That's been really important for us to do. It's been a pretty rigorous feedback process, I think. One of the things that it has led to for 2025 is the consideration of trying to widen the voting process. So lots of people were saying it's great to be able to get 100 or so people in a room and ask them all to vote, but we know that more people wanted to come into the room than were able to, and there might be a much wider kind of constituency, if you like, out there in the Lancaster district who simply aren't able to make the time on a Saturday morning to come along and do this. So we've been working on ways to introduce online voting for a short period prior to the event for Your Pots in 2025, and we're finalising the details of how we can do that in a way that is manageable and fair, in the same way as the voting process on the day is manageable and fair as well. So that'll be a big change for us. But I'm really interested to see what it does in terms of engagement, you know, and how it helps us to get the word out about involvement in these kind of projects to a much wider audience potentially as well.
And finally for you, Sarah, what's next for the Repair Cafe? What's your ambitions after the first successful year?
Well, we're continuing with everything that we're doing at the moment, and that's going from strength to strength. But we are in discussions about providing workshops for the local community, and we will have facilitators who will probably derive from many of the volunteers we already have at the moment. These workshops will be about sharing skills. There will be a sign-up process, for example. It might just be something as simple as changing a fuse, changing a plug, identifying a problem, sort of diagnostics, some things that many of us do take for granted, but it can help take the pressure off us if people have that basic knowledge. And so this next year is really all about sharing skills and making people more aware of the environmental impact.
Yeah, Sara, actually, I just wanted to ask, was this the first time that you had applied for any kind of funding, either
Yes, it
through the Repair
was.
Cafe or in any other organisation?
Yeah, I'd been involved in bid writing in the past. I'm a volunteer with Wellness Walks, which has since got charitable status. So I'd done on a smaller scale for materials and equipment for mountain leading and things like that, taking groups out that suffer from loneliness and isolation. So I've had a little bit of background, I suppose, experience, but not this scale, and certainly not for myself, who was running it and organising it all. There's a lot of responsibility and pressure. Since then, we had also got some funding through the 3R charity. So becoming a little bit more au fait with it.
Good. Any questions from the audience?
Honest, it's not really a question, but I just wanted to say how absolutely inspiring that was, because it was so good to hear from Sara that, you know, when you first advertised, you got that, you know, surprisingly positive response, because it's I often sit here thinking, well, you know, where do I start? Will anybody be interested? And so it was really good to hear that.
So I'm going to ask one for you, Nick. What do you have to do in order to account for the money that we've got from the Closing Loops program from the National Lottery? What's the process that you need to go through to kind of satisfy them?
Yeah, so really, in terms of receiving applications and ensuring that the group or organisation that's applying is eligible to receive the money, it's really about looking at whether the group or organisation runs itself in a kind of sufficiently diligent way, whether it is financially secure, but particularly financially well managed in terms of having a real bank account, in terms of having more than one person that signs off on things, in terms of being able to nominate somebody at the head of the organisation that can be legally responsible for its delivery, and in terms of making sure that it can provide sufficiently robust financial reporting, and if it can meet standards for safeguarding children and vulnerable adults, for example. We go through a kind of due diligence tick list, which is based on information that for some organisations like charities or CICs is available online. For others, it would be based on a examination of information that they upload to us during the application process. If the organisation is successful, we work with them to conclude a grant agreement, which is a legal contract between ourselves and the organisation for the delivery of that project. And then we follow it up at the end with a final review of what's been achieved over the period that the project's been running, usually about 12 months. Look at how all of that compares to targets that were set at the beginning, and receive the financial information in terms of spend against budget and evidence of the defrayal of the project funding. We package all of that up annually and send it to the National Lottery Community Fund as a overall report that takes in who's applied, who was successful, and what's happened.
So, I mean, I think it's really important for the group to kind of understand that obviously this money comes with lots of strings attached. You have to satisfy the National Lottery that you're fulfilling their needs, but then at the same time, we're trying to make this as easily as accessible to the groups who are bidding. So we have a simple application form, as simple as possible. Then we go through a kind of verification. So we try and verify that those applications are able to go forward and check that they fit in with the culture. We don't do that. We bring another panel in to do that. Then there's the actual event with all the things that went into the run up to that, such as recording a video. But it's only after groups have been granted funding that we actually then have to go back and ask for some of that more detailed information that would otherwise perhaps be submitted up front. So we're kind of trying to play with the normal grant making system.
We're taking part in a Green Participatory Budget event. How do we advertise that the money that we give out should not be spent on products that come from an unscrupulous corporation?
Do you have any answer to that one, Nick?
So I guess we don't go to the extent of defining what an unscrupulous corporation might be and develop a way to prevent money from being used to purchase products from them. However, certainly what we do through the process, and I think we've implemented this more as time has gone on, is to really communicate with organisations that are thinking of applying and trying to make it clear in our guidance that rather than, for example, buying equipment new or buying tools or buying other resources new, it's important to use the community that's grown up around closing loops and the possibility process to think about where you could either commission activities from other organisations locally, or to share equipment and materials, or to consider how you can recover something from waste rather than going straight out to buy it on the open market. So, for example, dealing with a local manufacturer that you know has a particular waste product, for example, that you could still make use of.
And I think it's really important to say that the values and of the programme are really clearly communicated through the criteria for the fund. We provide quite an extensive kind of frequently answered questions, so we provide lots of guidance, and then we do other things like the meetings that Sarah mentioned. We bring people together to talk about the application process. I do some online mentoring sometimes if people have got questions about it. But at the end of the day, it's the community that decides. And as long as you can show your passion and the benefit to the wider community that would come through your project, that's where the decision is making. So we're almost using the wisdom of the crowd of people who already buy into that regenerative economy kind of world to try and make things work as best we can. We'll never get it perfectly. Sarah, anything you'd like to say about that sort of thing, or perhaps some advice you would give to an organisation that was thinking of applying?
I definitely, to reiterate the wisdom of crowds, that's one of the things that I'm a big advocate of. I think if we, come together collectively, communities tend to know the right pathway, and come up with the right conclusion, the right outcomes when we work together. And I think that's one of the number one lessons from all of this. For anyone looking to apply in the future, I'd say, aside from the funding aspect of it, I think it's an amazing opportunity to bring organisations together and to learn from one another. We're only a year old, so we're still babies, really, in the grand scheme of things. And any opportunity we can get to learn from other more established charities or CICs or social enterprises is a great opportunity for us,
Great. Well, we're going to wrap up this bit of the meeting. We're going to stay online for another 15 minutes or so. But I know we've all got busy schedules and lives to lead. So Nick and Sara, if you need to go,
I
please
do,
do feel free to
unfortunately.
drop
Yes.
up. But I'd also just like to give our thanks for you giving up your time, particularly Sara, you,
You're
but also
welcome.
Nick. I know we've got you pinned down, Nick, because we're part of this process, but it's been great to have you here today. And I'm sure everybody, they've all got their mics off, but I'm sure they're all giving you a round of applause in the background. So thank you very much for your time today. We're going to keep going. I'd like to welcome everybody into the open space.
Yeah, it's interesting. I'm in the process of putting together a really large funding bid for a really ambitious project in Derbyshire, and I've never done this before. So this is all kind of I think in my community I've done small funding bids, but this is actually well out of my league at the moment. So this is a really kind of quite steep learning curve and all the bits of advice that we're kind of getting and is really useful.
And I know that we've collected loads of resources just through this process, and we haven't just taken it new, we've taken all sorts of templates from other places and ideas we've been sharing, because we're moving to a different form of voting this year. We did before voting into ballot boxes, but now we're going to move to a ballot form. So then we've got templates that have been used by other people. So it's all about building that sort of knowledge base about what works and what doesn't work.
I'm just home from Montrose. I'm a trustee on this film festival. It's an environmental film festival. So there's all these environmental films that go and show, and then we choose the winner, and you can enter your film at the start of the year to be part of the festival. And I think a participatory budget event would make a great wee film for to submit to the film festival.
And interestingly, some arts places are using PB to actually commission as well. So you actually commission pieces of new artwork through their venue. So there's all sorts of different ways you can use PB, both as a way of sort of recognizing quality by a public vote, but also by using it to sort of seed new initiatives within the community.
Yeah, I'm just sort of mulling over when people are invited to come along and judge what's on offer and what they're going to vote for. This is a general invite to the local citizenship, is it? And how does that work with what about the end users of the organisations? Are they not to be part of that as citizens themselves?
We very much encourage groups to bring along supporters to the event. So a lot of the marketing, although we do put out the word through the wider Closing Loops network, and we also kind of put notices around, a lot of the people who come because they are interested in a particular group. So we leverage their networks to really get the word out as much as possible. But really crucially, in the voting mechanism, people have to vote 4 times. They can't just vote once. And if they just vote once, their vote doesn't count. And if they vote 5 times, their vote doesn't count. And if they put 2 votes in one particular ballot box, it doesn't count. And that means it's forcing people to think about who else to support in their local community. So we do have this complaint that a successful group can bring lots of people along, they'll all vote for them. But we try, by getting as many people involved as possible, to dilute that effect, because everybody's in fact got 4 votes and they have to use those 4 votes. So very much it's about kind of circles of engagement and trying to encourage them to do that. And this year, as we said, we are actually trying to reach even further. Venues are a problem. There's only a space for 100 people in the story. We've had complaints about people not being able to access it because they can't come on a Saturday morning. So with this year, are going to try this second online vote, and we're still developing the rules for that. But that will mean that people will be able to watch the videos that we get groups to record and which are played alongside the marketplace. And then anybody will be able to vote online for those projects. They'll also have to vote 4 times separately. They'll have to leave some information like an address and a name and a postcode. And so we're going to try and make sure that people don't multiple vote. We haven't got like a fully secure system. And we're also going to, I think, allow people who voted online to also vote at the event. But what we're going to crucially do is that the online votes are going to be weighted to be a third in value to the full votes that you get from coming along to the event. So we're trying to play with widening participation, getting enough people to vote so it's not easy to game it, and also reduce the barriers to participation and hearing about this. But it's all a bit of an experiment.
I'm wondering about things like outcomes and emergence. So I'm thinking about projects that aim for system change. And so my question, I suppose, is in terms of the audience, how kind of open are we in terms of outcomes that aren't certain? So sometimes with funding, they'll want to know exactly what you think the outcome would be. And some of the projects that we do, there are certain outcomes that we're aware of, but there's also a lot of emergence in the projects that we do. I think funders are kind of catching up with that a little bit now, still a little bit too slowly. But I'm wondering, kind of in terms of PB, whether that is a more equitable route, or, you know, how can we explain that in this process, that there will be a percentage of this program, that this project, which is emergent and we don't know the outcomes of it, and that is part of the project. And I'm just wondering, because often with funders, that's quite a difficult thing. So my local authority really struggle with, they will give pots of money out. They do not want anything with any kind of emergence. They want to know exactly what you're going to do, when you're going to do it, and what the outcome is going to be before you've even done the project. If you can do that, you get the money. If you say there's a question mark, they will pull the money and say, no, we can't fund that. And I'm wondering, in terms of emergence, how PB can answer that better than more traditional funders.
Can I throw that to you, Nick? Because you're the one that has to account for this. And I think we have kind of thought about these issues. What do you feel about that question of an uncertain outcome, but a potential?
Yeah, so I think at the application stage and at kind of the most basic level, we're asking applicants to provide a outputs, outcomes, and targets table for us. So that is obviously very measurable, and that is something we'd want to measure against at the end of the projects as well when they're funded. I think we've always been prepared to have kind of outcomes and targets of the outputs to be relatively loose. We ask about behaviour change separately in the reporting process. That's one of the important things that we're kind of measured on for the National Lottery Community Fund across the entire project. But I think when it comes to the voting element of it and the public involvement element, nobody, I don't get the sense that anybody is standing up in that marketplace and saying, look at this table of outcomes, outputs, and targets that we're going to achieve by the end of this. What they're talking a lot more is about what they're passionate about as an organisation, what it is that they want to get to using the money, and you know, a lot more about what they want people to experience in the work that they do together within the actual activities that they're proposing. And if people came back to us at the end and said, you know, something else entirely happened, we delivered all the activities, but something unexpected happened, as long as risk has been managed in that situation, I think we're really absolutely fine with that.
A while back, I ran a community research project in a village in Cumbria. And to be honest, I do community research all day, every day. The bit that made this one very good is I took 4 young people, let's say, I think 3 was 16, 1 was 17, something like that. And I trained them up as to how to do community research, and then sent them out into the street doing field research and blah, blah, blah. And then got them to actually analyse that research and then present their findings and what the recommended actions were, and you know, and it led to some really positive things. To do an annual pot, but actually get the process to be delivered by, for example, care leavers or cared for children. And so the question I was going to ask Nick was whether, with, you know, a lot of guidance in year 1 and slightly less guidance in year 2 and so on and so forth, whether you think that this sort of project could be run by young people who don't have training.
My simple answer to that is probably yes, but they will need support and scaffolding around them when the process begins. So we did a lot of work previously about working on PB in schools and in youth community settings. So definitely there's a lot of resources around how you could. I think a lot of it is around how you set up the design and how you get people involved in those conversations around how this works, and then takes them through the different stages. So I definitely think there would be a way of saying, by running this process, we can actually and we've learned a lot by running Your Pots, actually upskill other young people, and they could take a role, for example, in being compares at the event, or hosts, or asking questions, or you know, just generally helping out. They could also, you know, be on the verification panel and make comments around that. So there's many different ways in which we could simplify the ask. At the end of the day, there is public money here. So or there is money, somebody's money is here, so you have to be careful. But as I said, I've seen very young people being involved in quite significant ways within a process. So I think it's really about how much the adults will release power rather than how much the young people will step up. And that's the conversation you need to reassure yourself is what's being prepared to be done.
It's a debate I have, not in relation to PB, but yes, you know, the word co-design. Is it actually co though?
I'll send you. I can, if you follow up and you really are serious about saying, could we run a kind of a youth-led process where it's all part of that structure? I could certainly share some resources around that. So thanks you for coming today. First time we've done this, bit of an experiment. Sure, it'll get better, and we've got another one coming up on the 25th. So I will send all that information to all of your right email addresses. But on the 25th of the 9th, we've got another session, which is with two people who have got long experience in delivering participatory grant making processes. That's Alan Budge, who was a colleague of mine for 10 or 12 years, really experienced in many different situations, and Karen Eben, who works in Northern Ireland and has run a number of processes, including the Big Dish Out and her work through Hare's Corner. So they're going to be coming along, similar format, hour long, on the 25th of the 9th. So if any of you can make that as well, that will be great. But we will share all the information and the invites for it.